Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. This is my weekly catch up on everything I read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading. So I had a superb reading week. I read two things and I really enjoyed both. They completely hooked me in. So let's jump right into it. So the first was one of my many lists, the Sundown Motel from Simone St. James, and I freaking loved it. I think people bury the lead on this one by saying it's, potentially creepy, maybe haunted hotel, and it's freaking haunted. It's definitely haunted. You find out very quickly. So this is kind of a paranormal situation. If you're looking for a crime thriller with paranormal, maybe horror elements, this is a great mix. And it even has a side character who's really into true crime. So the investigative parts really feel like true crime. So this is split into two timelines, the historical in 1982 and the present in 2017. And in 2017, we're following Carly. And Carly has just experienced the death of her mom, and her mom never really got over the loss of her sister who went missing in the 1980s. And you can tell where that's going, that in the 1980s we're following Viv, Carly's aunt. And so as Carly is kind of shiftless in the grief, she gives up everything. She drops out of school and decides to head to Phil, New York to kind of understand why her aunt went missing, why she was never found, why people didn't really look that much for her. So she heads there and winds up kind of walking in the footsteps of her aunt, almost recreating her aunt's life, working at the Sundown Motel. So I don't know that I can say too much more than that, other than, she's looking into this missing woman, her aunt, but her aunt was doing the same, really. So in terms of recreating, she really mirrors what was happening in the past. And her aunt kind of got caught up in not understanding why nobody cared that people in Fell, New York just sort of knew that women went missing sometimes or died, and nobody really cared to find who was responsible. So this has such a great narrative surrounding that, and I have complicated feelings about it because we know that the media disproportionately and society disproportionately favors missing white women, young, pretty white women. And in this, that's not really tackled. So I think it's missing that perhaps. But otherwise, the conversation around that, around the ways that society discredits women who are hurt or missing, the vocabulary used even. So it really focuses in on the words that are used in news stories and the ways that the women are talked about as spinsters or loose, or they're blamed almost, where it's talked about that they stayed with a boyfriend who probably just offed them, that sort of thing. So it really talks about the way that society sweeps those women under the rug and just never bothers to find them. So I think that was a really great conversation. As to the actual true crime elements, like I said, I really enjoyed the investigative part where they're looking into news articles, having to use archives and that sort of thing. So it really felt very, very tangible in terms of the setting and looking into these past crimes. And one of the things that the author does really just incredibly is she just hands you information. A ton of information about what is going to happen or what has happened, and then flips to the following timeline and plays out everything that you have just learned, so you know exactly what's going to happen, but it's still completely gripping, and it completely surprises you how it plays out. So yeah, really, really just stunningly well written. So I loved this. This was a great, great book. I'm so disappointed I have sat on St. James' work, and I definitely need to pick up some more of it. So the other thing that I read this week was The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. And again, everybody told me this was great. It was a really great read. And this is a far future sci-fi, I would say, that's a multiverse concept. So in this setting, we have figured out how to travel between multiverses, and only to the ones that are very closely connected to ours. So there's 380 some odd. And out of all the people who can travel between worlds, if you are still alive in another one of these worlds, you will be severely injured or dead if you try to travel there. So Kara is our main protagonist, and she is extremely valuable as a traveler because she can travel to so many of these worlds, because she's dead in a lot of them. And so the big pristine city where this takes place has pulled all these people out of poverty to be traversers. And so she was in, really terrible poverty. And the world building here is quite good. So I don't know how to express that. It feels very straightforward, maybe. I want to say simplistic, but it's not simplistic because it is well built. But it's very clear cut, I think. It feels a bit like Hunger Games, where you have this very pristine, wily city that's technologically advanced, and everything is socialized and everyone is taken care of. And then there's a literal wall and Ash Town on the other side, where it's hot and dusty and poverty and run by warlords. It's basically Mad Max. So the world didn't strike me as nuanced as I wanted it to be. Like I said, it really struck me very like Hunger Games. So it felt kind of YA in that aspect. But anyway, it was a well-built world. So in the beginning, I almost was confused because the title and the start of the world building really seemed like it was leaning toward this almost mystical element when the traversers are in between worlds, when they're going from our world or their world, I guess, to another world. And they all kind of agree on this, that there is sort of a mystical element to that. I thought maybe she was going to get stuck there or something. That does not happen. Instead, the kind of beginning parts really are almost slice of lifey. It really feels like it's just her going about her day and doing her job and, having really complicated memories. And we learn a lot about her complex relationships with her family back in the other city, in poverty, as she is kind of there in a tenuous space in this wealthy city, that she's only able to be there for as long as she has this job. And she has this very complicated job where she's going to other worlds to gather data, basically, and she's trying to get into another more secure position than that. So I think that starts transitioning once she starts really thinking about this terribly abusive relationship that she had in the past. So I think a huge part of this is caught up in complicated relationships, and that abusive relationship is very extreme. So if you have any sort of triggers for domestic violence or familial abuse, you for sure want to go in with a lot of warnings on this, because it's pretty graphic, it's pretty violent. So I think that one is one to be aware of as well, because of the situation she came from. There's a lot of drug use and prostitution, that sort of thing, in such a slim volume. So really heavy themes of everything that she is dealing with. She also has, coming out of this past abusive relationship. So at her work, there's this woman that she has really strong feelings for, and she just doesn't understand why she's not kind of romantically getting through to this woman. And so this has so much to do with complex relationships and our past baggage and how that kind of creates the person that we are. But once this finally gets into the really, I would say this one kind of has thrillery elements as well as the previous book. It really has a fast-paced, compulsive, high-tension plot once we get into it, because in one of these other worlds, things go horribly wrong, and that sets off her unraveling the secrets of everything that she thought she knew that she didn't, and kind of helps her understand the people around her even better. So I just really enjoyed the complexity of that and the way that it really got into her difficult relationships with everyone in her life, and her understanding of the world was not as clear-cut as she thought it was. and that in many cases, because of past trauma and abuse, her relationships were always going to be complicated, and the ways that in this difficult situation that she lived in, there maybe were no options for people to have healthy relationships. Like everybody was just grasping for something, even if it was unhealthy. So I think this did so many things really well in that aspect. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I think the technology was very cool. The one thing that I could not get over, like through the whole thing, it kept coming back, was the fact that, like, how ridiculously silly it is, the idea of there being like a tangible you that the universe would recognize if there was a duplication of you. So the whole point is, if you were traveling to these other worlds, you die if there's another version of you, because the universe won't allow there to be two of you there. Like, no, that's very silly. So yeah, so that kept dragging me out of any immersion at moments, but that was just me having a hang up, really, is all. So yeah, another one. I really, really freaking enjoyed it. So everybody's gonna be mad at me. I didn't finish The Dark Forest. So I have 30 pages left of this. I will finish this later today for sure. I'm gonna sit down and finish it. But yes, this is remaining yet another week on my list. Then I picked up a couple of new things, because that's what I do. I picked up a Tor.com novella, In the Watchful City by Qiouyi Liu, and this will be SFF. I don't really remember what it was about, other than when I saw it come out, I knew I wanted to read it, and I'm picking this up for Kristinelle's novella month in January, because this is a new release. And I also picked up Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts by Rebecca Hall and illustrated by Hugo Martinez. And this is a graphic nonfiction, and I saw a load of copies at my library and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And then since I have picked it up, I saw Britta Bowler picked it up, and I think Lauren from Lauren and the Books picked it up. So this is likely going to be a good one. It is maybe not my art style. It's got really like heavy black and white, really dense lines, but it looks very pretty, and I think very readable, other than having an awful lot of text. So it's definitely going to be text heavy. So, but I'm super interested in it, so I think that'll be probably a one-day read, most likely, since it's a graphic novel. But yeah, so a couple short things, because then we're going to get into long stuff whenever I do finally finish The Dark Forest. So that's all the book stuff, I think, for today. In terms of other stuff, I mentioned that I had gotten my booster. Of course, after filming, that did kind of kick in, but it was very mild. So I had like 24 hours after I got my shot, it kicked in finally and kind of knocked me out a little bit, but it was just like feverish for about a day. It was not very bad, and because of the shot that I had, it is a half dose and was milder than my second dose, so that was fine. Not a big deal. So otherwise, I think there has been nothing really going on. I am staying pretty very much at home and trying to avoid going out. So yeah, I'm not gonna have any very exciting news about the goings on around here. It did warm up enough that I got to go for really nice walks today with Cinnamon. We did a full loop, which is, my neighborhood is like a mile around the ponds. So yeah, it was very nice to be able to do that, because it has been brutally cold here. It's been single digits the past couple days, and it's supposed to warm up for a couple days and then it get cold again, as per usual. So we're having very up and down constantly. Yeah, I don't think I have anything exciting to talk about. Like, I got new towels, which is very exciting. I had gotten my really nice neighbor that I help out sometimes. Like, I get her newspaper for her and her trash and all that stuff, because she's very old and unfortunately just moved and left to go live at a senior living place. And she and her daughter both always give me gift cards, which they really don't have to, but I got a Macy's gift card, and so I normally like toss those gift cards in my car so I can give them to people at like street corners and stuff if I see them, but I don't think they're gonna need a Macy's gift card. So I used a Macy's gift card to get some nice new towels because I had pillaged my guest room towels when the shutdown happened, really, because mine were getting pretty threadbare and I needed new ones. So I just was like, I'm not gonna have guests anytime soon, so we'll use those. Now, 2 years in, those are getting pretty threadbare, so I got myself new towels. So that was a big splurge. And then I also bought some ruggable rugs. I have one, if you have ever seen that blue and yellow rug in my videos, that's a ruggable. I got some more. I needed some new rugs for downstairs in the basement, and I finally splurged and did that because they're fairly expensive, and I needed one of the like long runner rugs because my basement is very long and narrow. And so I finally splurged and got a couple of those, and so those will be very exciting to have. I've needed new rugs down there for a really long time. Cinnamon does not like to go down there if he can't like island hop between the rugs, and so having a nice runner down there will help him out immensely. So then I think that's it for my week. The only other thing I have is my recommendations for the week. I just got just a couple. The first one is an author interview that I watched with Anna Malika Tubbs, who wrote Three Mothers: How the Mothers of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Changed History. And it was a really interesting conversation. So this was put on by my library, and it was supposed to be an in-person event. Sadly, they went back to virtual, but fortunately for everybody, that means it's online. And it's really well produced. They did it with the Higher Education channel, and so they put in some pictures and stuff. So that was nice, but it was really interesting to hear her talk about certain things, like the fact that all of these women were pastors' wives, and how in kind of the society of the time for Black people, that was the space, the church was the space where they could be, upstanding citizens. They could be leaders. They could be in positions of power. And so it's not really that surprising that these women were in these roles alongside pastors, and really affecting their communities in that way. So that was really interesting. I think maybe the interviewer spent too much time for me on the process of writing this book, but I found the interview really, really great and enjoyed all the information that I got from that. And the other one was another one I mentioned a couple weeks ago. This was via Folio Society. They shared an article, and it was a really great one. So this was from Smithsonian Magazine, and it reminded me I need to follow Smithsonian Magazine. The medieval queens whose daring murderous reigns were quickly forgotten. Over the centuries, Brunhild and Fredegund were dismissed and even parodied, but a new book shows how they outwitted their enemies, like few in history. And this is from Shelley Puhack, who has authored the book The Dark Queens. And it sounded so fascinating, and this it was a really well presented article with a lot of illustrations, like lots of pictures that involve these queens and objects and that sort of thing. So just a really fascinating, awesome article, and I totally want to pick up the book, so I will link that down below. So both of those will be down below in the show notes. So I think that's it for me today. I hope you had as great a reading week as I did. Thank you so much for watching. And Gumbo is definitely sitting there judging my filming. I can tell. She's my harshest critic. It is very, very cold. I can't wait to get my new sliding door because that is a lot of ice right next to my bed. I went to the store for supplies to make soup and hit the jackpot on this. I'm trying to move to decaf. Anxiety has been awful lately, and last time I went, they didn't have any whole bean decaf for my coffee maker. This time, they had this, and it smells like baking chocolate, which I love. It smells so good, so I'm super excited to try this out. I'm making AJ Dunn's pinto bean stew. Looks pretty delicious.